Well, as we were saying, President-elect Trump is still deciding who's going to fill key positions in his cabinet, and the post of Treasury Secretary is one. The other is Secretary of State. He also still seems to be formulating the position he's going to adopt on climate change. In 2012, Donald Trump famously tweeted, "The concept of global warming was created by the Chinese in order to make US manufacturing non-competitive." And he stuck to this climate change denial rhetoric throughout the presidential campaign. However, in one interview post-election, he seemed to row back a bit, accepting there were, in his words, there was some connectivity between human activity and global temperatures. And asked to clarify, his chief of staff, Reince Priebus, told Fox News, as far as the issue of climate change, the only thing he was saying after being asked a few questions about it is, look, he'll have an open mind about it, but he has his default position, which most of it is a bunch of bunk, but he'll have an open mind and listen to people. Well, Brigadier General Stephen Cheney runs the American Security Project, and he's launching a new campaign and a film on the security threat posed by climate change, and he joins me from Brussels. Brigadier General, thank you very much indeed. Do you think it is time to have another debate about whether or not man-made climate change and global warming is happening?
Well, Adam, I don't think it's a debate. The science is clear. It's there. CO2 is contributing to climate change. We're cooking the earth. So to me, that debate is closed. The problem is trying to convince those who are deniers on the far right.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I mean, they're the people who've been elected to run America. We saw Reince Priebus saying Donald Trump's got an open mind on this. You're saying that this is a very present danger.
Oh, it is a clear and present danger. And I think what you're probably going to see is maybe on January 20th, when he takes that oath of office to defend the country against all enemies, foreign and domestic, he's going to realize that top among the enemies is climate change. And I think it's high on the list of every head of state, even in the EU or the G20. So admittedly, he's a man you've got to convince, but from the perspective of a retired military officer, and my organization has several admirals and generals who look at it from a national security perspective, we know that climate change is going to cause huge migration. It will contribute to terrorism. Your bases and stations that are on the coasts are going to go underwater. So these are things that we know the cause. We know the cause is CO2 and emissions, so he's got to tackle that problem.
But I mean, the difficulty, General, is all the appointees he's made so far, none of them have a strong position on belief in climate change and belief in action.
Well, I understand that. But I think the rest of the world recognizes the problem. Certainly when you look at the Paris Accord and China, the United States helping to bring China into that accord, and then you look at COP21, COP22, we're well down the road to helping stop emissions and contributing to limiting climate change. And I strongly believe that he will listen to reason there. There is a business argument for this, by the way, that using and investing in renewables is perhaps more advantageous than investing in fossil fuels. He's a business guy. I think his mind is, like he said, he's open to the argument. You present the argument, and then you present the national security perspective on this, that we know there's going to be sea level rise, that eventually we're going to have to stop this, that he'll understand that.
Do you think there is any truth in the argument which he has made that the whole climate change debate has benefited the Chinese and Chinese technology and Chinese industry at the expense of domestic industry in the United States?
I see absolutely no connection. And I think that statement was pandering to the electorate. He'll back off of that statement. I've never seen anything else that statistically proves that particular point. And in fact, bringing China to the table and having them to sign up to the Paris Accord, to me, is proof positive that that is indeed not the case.
As we've been reporting this morning, Donald Trump's real annoyance about the whole climate change debate seems to be quite strongly based on wind turbines affecting the view from his golf courses in Scotland and elsewhere. Are wind turbines part of the solution? They do have a great impact on the landscape, and many people say they're not really very efficient.
Well, I have seen some statistics that show that the jobs produced from renewables in the United States, whether it be wind and solar or geothermal, are actually greater than the number of jobs that you have in oil, gas, and coal. So there's a business perspective to that he would clearly understand. There is no doubt that wind is efficient, that it's helping, and then certainly the solar prices are coming way down. It's going to be competitive, if not more competitive than gas and oil, certainly when you see the gas and oil prices that eventually will start to go back up. There's no doubt the wind and solar are helping.
How would you rank the current, given all that's happened this year, the Brexit vote, the election of Donald Trump, as someone who's spent 30 years in the Marines and works in national security, how would you rank the threats, if you like, to our way of life? What do you think?
Adam,
is it Putin? Is it climate change? What should we be most worried about?
You know, Adam, senior military officers and our military in general in the United States is very good at strategic planning. In other words, looking at threats 5, 10, 20, 40 years down the road. Admiral Locklear, the former Pacific Command commander, said his #1 threat in the long term was climate change, because he knew that whether it was catastrophic weather or sea level rise, those things would all contribute to instability in his area of operation. So I hear what you're saying when you talk Putin or terrorism. Those are threats that are on your door right now, and they're knocking here. Climate change is a much more gradual thing, but it's not going to be so gradual in 5, 10, or 15 years. Certainly when the polar ice cap melts, and it is going to melt. We've seen catastrophic melting up there. When you look at places like Bangladesh, 1 meter sea level rise causes 30 million refugees, and that is going to happen. So it's hard to rank it from a strategic or operational perspective, but it's certainly got to be in your top 5.
And immediately, operationally, do you think Eastern Europe is probably the most dangerous flashpoint we face with NATO confronting Russia?
Well, Adam, I mean, there's flashpoints all over the world. Let's look at Syria, Afghanistan. You can see things occurring the Spratlys. There are all kinds of problems. No doubt about it. What's occurring with NATO and Eastern Europe is very problematic. It's troublesome, and it's got that also has to be high on his list to consider too. And then you talk about some of his talk about NATO and Article 5. I strongly believe, and this is a little bit out of the climate change realm, but I strongly believe we will never back down of Article 5, and we'll always defend other countries in NATO based on Article 5.
General, thank you very much indeed. His project, our new documentary, is called The Age of Consequences. We're certainly living in that.